try to embellish and try to work at new things, and you will see that your doors will open up in your life in many different ways that you probably would not expect that to happen. But you have to be mindful and you have to allow it.
Well, today's guest is Steve Safrit. Steve's in his 60s, and he got into yoga about 25 years ago as a means to help warm up for karate. He and his business partners had a gym in North Carolina, and their focus was on karate and bodybuilding. And he's got a long career in fitness, and he shares a great story for how he got into yoga. Steve's now a yoga instructor, and he owns his own studio called SoFul Yoga in Salisbury, North Carolina. And we get into a great conversation. He talks a lot about not only his path, but also how yoga has helped with stamina, his focused recovery from workouts and balance. We talk a little about Arnold Schwarzenegger's practice back in the 70s. And it's just a great conversation. And we get into a little bit of sort of spirituality at the end, which was kind of unexpected. But, you know, I think it all ties in and all ties together. So I know you're going to enjoy the conversation. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show. Well, Steve, hey, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Derek. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to this and looking forward to helping other people and especially men on their journey with yoga. Thank you for having me this morning.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you being here because I know our mutual friend, Brian Wimes, had mentioned the impact you had on his life, 15 some odd years ago, getting him into yoga. And when he shared your story, I was like, I got to get Steve on the show. So thank you for being here and I appreciate your time.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I feel really good about this. I will be honest, my first Zoom meeting, but I feel like I'm doing it with the right person. And just like in yoga, we go down many paths. So I'm looking forward to doing this interview with you. Thank you
awesome.
very much.
Well, it's great having you here, and you're a pro out of the gates. So all is good. So by the way, tell us a little bit about your first exposure to yoga. I know it was about 20 some odd years ago. Where were you in your life? What brought you to the idea of doing yoga or considering it?
Well, thank you. It's been refreshing to go back on those years. And I can recall 22 years ago, 1999 specifically, we were just in the entry years of our new business, my partner and I. And we're always looking for something to add to our representation of our classes. And I decided that, I felt like yoga was a great path, even though it was new and cutting edge in the Western civilization. I wanted to just give it a shot. So it came by way of doing martial arts and kickboxing. One of our martial art friends introduced us to doing katas and stretching before we did the practice, and he called it hatha yoga. And
by the way, just to make sure the audience is totally synced in, at this time, you're in your mid-30s and you guys owned a gym. Was that what like a regular gym, or was it a gym with a particular focus?
It was a focus of everybody's fitness. And we had a Gold's Gym brand, but we wanted to open that up to families to, the stereotype in Gold's Gym back then was lifting. And we wanted to embrace the aerobics, the mental part of the yoga was something that, we wanted to encompass. So we introduced that through kickboxing and karate with katas. And non-realizing, my martial art friend, he taught hatha yoga. So he said, let's do an hour of yoga before we start our practice.
And by the way, what is kata? I never heard of kata.
Katas are, forms of stretching, to get the ligaments and tendons.
This is a karate thing?
Karate thing, get your hips open, get your knees flexed, get your shoulders nice and limber. And it takes primarily an hour to get these limbs exercised to where you can perform, and get your body to limber to move in these particular kicks and moves. And it took an hour for us to open up to that. And what I found that it was more mental and spiritual in a way. I mean, it just took me down a road where I felt fluid.
So the katas themselves or more of the yoga? More of
the yoga, because we did the hatha yoga first. And, I didn't understand that. The martial art, excuse me, let me cut this off. My phone's cutting in on us here. But the martial arts led us down a path of the yoga being so strong and primarily using that was a workout in itself. I mean, you found yourself euphoric when you got to the time to do karate, but the yoga was more specifically what I found the benefits from. So it, allowed us at that point in time to hire an instructor that would teach yoga, and it happened to be a karate instructor. So
let me jump in here a second. So you got the studio in Salisbury, North Carolina. It's a Gold's Gym. You guys are looking to incorporate some other things, particularly something that's going to help out, kind of warming you up for karate.
Yes.
And who was it that sort of even mentioned? Had you heard of yoga before somebody actually mentioned it?
It's funny because I think in the song, there's an old 60s song. I can't recall the artist, but I remember him using yoga. And I always thought that was unique, but that's the only time I'd ever heard of yoga. I mean, it's such a old art coming from the East and coming from India 2,000 years ago, and then being introduced here into the United States was something I thought would help us on our path to make our gym the best that it could be for our community. We sort of, involved Randy Smith was his name. And he was the leader of the karate program that he had with Sidekick Karate. It's an American.
He's someone who's a known entity in North Carolina, or just nationally he was a known
national.
Name?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was one of the twins of the Goldust twins. Ricky and Randy Smith were popular in leading that art. But, Randy specifically taught Hatha yoga. I mean, he was an instructor. So as he came into our club and we said, let's do this, one time a week. We introduced that class on a Saturday morning, and I could tell you it was always, started out very small, but it grew very rapidly. And as I was an owner of a club with my business partner, we decided, to try to get the boys involved, get the men going. So, and we brought them in there, and we found out there were more men taking yoga than females, and it was really interesting.
Wait a second. This is like late 90s, early 2000s, and you had more men than women doing yoga?
Absolutely. We had more men doing that.
So interesting back then, mostly guys. What do you think, first of all, did you guys have was it a challenge in trying to get some men to come to the studio to do yoga, or did they get it right away because it was sort of validated by a bunch of karate guys who said you guys should be doing this?
Yeah, I think we had a little moment owning the club. We could talk to these people and get them in there because we were in the club. We were part of the fixture, so we could introduce the guys and say, "Hey, try this new class out." Maybe if they were doing a step class, let's try something a little different. This yoga thing. And, of course you get the laughs and you get the giggles, a lot of people refer to it as yogurt, but
right.
We say, no, until you try this, you cannot market. So that's how we brought them in. I think we had a little edge by being in the club all day versus just a member. We were able to sit at a front desk and have people, hey, try this out. This Saturday we're doing an 8 a.m. class. It's called Hatha yoga. At that time it was, just a basic stretch. But what people found it was more profound because you could stretch your tendons to a further point. You could meditate a little bit while you were stretching. And, as we well know, these 22-year-old guys that are these people that have been in yoga for 22 years or not, they were football players, they were wrestlers, they were, runners back in their high school and college days. So your stretches were always very quick before the practice. Before you practice, you had a quick stretch, 3 to 5 minutes, and you're out there running. So I think people never had the opportunity to really take the time to really immerse themselves in a long stretch for 60 minutes or so. So it really gave them the benefits physically. So
this was early 2000s around this time, and then you got certified. Is that right?
Yes, I sure did, Derek. I went to a friend of mine and myself went down to Charlotte to Energy Quest, and Terry Reeves was the individual teaching this certification on power yoga. She helped the Panthers, stretch and get ready.
The Carolina Panthers, the pro football NFL.
Pro football team, NFL team, the Carolina Panthers. She would help them with her yoga style. So went down and got certified in her seminar. And really, at that time, we expanded our classes because they were so populated, and obviously men and women were invited. So we would invite them in and do different classes. We'd do a power yoga class. We'd do a karate kickboxing yoga. So we started introducing various forms so it would draw more people, because it was hard for people back then to do an hour of yoga. I mean, honestly, we had to do 30 minutes of yoga and 30 minutes of kickboxing. So we sort of intertwined those together. And, people decided at that time they liked the yoga more. So we phased out kickboxing and just did the yoga.
So let me also go back, because, I think, a lot of people don't think about the South as being a hotbed for yoga. We know a lot is changing quite a bit across the country with wellness programs, and yoga is a big part of that stuff. Did you guys feel like you were kind of pioneers doing yoga at this point in time? And did you have to search to try to find someone like Terry to take a certification, or was she sort of the known entity in the area because at the time yoga wasn't that big and she was the name to go get trained with?
Oh yeah, definitely. Pioneers. I don't know if that's, you could accurately say us as pioneers.
You sound like pioneers. Anyone started 20 years ago in certain parts of the country is a pioneer.
I can tell you it felt like a pioneer, because people literally would say, what is yoga? We had to get my intro was always, here's where it started. Here's what we do in the classes, the asanas. Here's how we practice it. And if you'll just give me a minute, we'll try it and see where we go with it. We did. And I did. I felt like it was a perfect opportunity to interject those classes and the yoga format in our program, because it really reached out to the feminine as well as the men, men more importantly, because, it's a Gold's Gym. It's the theory of the icon, which is the bodybuilder. And we wanted to not necessarily take that away from Gold's Gym, but add to that. So the aerobics part of Gold's Gym became, aerobics for everyone. Serious fitness, serious stretching, serious yoga for everyone is what we want to sort of envelop. And it worked. In a small town that we live in, we were able to do that. And to answer your question, I feel like we were sort of, pioneers to that question. It definitely in North Carolina, because, we're as far west as you can go before you hit the Atlantic. So I think it really worked out well.
So when you guys were teaching classes, was it pretty much like a vinyasa flow or sort of sun salutation? Do you guys do like a peak pose, or were there things you focused on, like, hey, we're focusing on hips today, or shoulders, or core? Tell me a little bit about some of your kind of how your programs worked.
Well, we learned from the basics in alignment. We started with alignment or Tadasana, moving through the poses were very basic. We did a vinyasa style and really, I wanted to say focus on the vinyasa, but it was more, it was slower, more concentrated effort. You see these hot forms of yoga, these very fast Bikram styles of yoga. It was not that. It was, let's go very intentional and very mindful, where we could sync these poses up and people could feel what they were doing versus just saying, I don't know what I'm doing. We didn't want to send that I can't keep up message. We wanted to send a message of, let's see how it can make you feel.
I appreciate that, because I think about when I'm in certain vinyasa classes, and especially if I have an injury, it's taken me a minute to get in and out of a pose. And some of those vinyasa classes move pretty quick. And, if you're also a newer student, your head's on a swivel. It's like you're like a defensive back trying to figure out who's doing what. Is the person to the right of me doing what the person to the left of me is? What should I be doing next? And sometimes I agree that those classes, and there's a class for everyone out there, but some of those classes move too fast. And I do agree that you can slow things down and get just as much benefit. And even a student who's, at a higher level in the class, they might be used to doing a vinyasa flow that's faster, but they're going to get new benefits from joining the rest of the class, slowing down their practice a little. And I agree, a nice, slower, intentional practice where you can focus on alignment and maybe give some cues. It sounds like a really great class to bring more people into and have them enjoy the benefits.
Yes, our goal was especially that we would maybe pick 5 asanas out into the population, especially the men listening. The 5 asanas could be, Tadasana. They have very
mountain pose. Yep.
Mountain pose. They have very indie long words. And I typically like to westernize those just with the American terminology. Mountain pose is Tadasana. Warrior pose is, a lunge. But you have to translate that to people so they can understand that they don't have to, really hear the word to know what they're going to do. They just need to see the instructor. To get into a basic class is where you start your journey. And that's why we started a 101 basic yoga class. And that's how I think everyone that is looking to get into a program should start with just the basics. And the basics are just a nice, slow flow, just a nice and easy, especially if someone's really got painful injuries from, sports or work. They don't want to come in there and move real fast. They want to go slower with intention and mindfulness.
Yep. That's
practice and breath, obviously.
I'm 100% with you. So let's talk a little bit about your practice. What drew you when you started doing yoga, 20 years ago for karate? What were some of the things that kept you going and that you really appreciated about it? And then as your practice has continued over the years, what are now the newer benefits that you're unlocking and enjoying?
Well, thank you. I would say I entered yoga with the more physical benefits that I could retain from that. I was a bodybuilder years ago, and I enjoyed the slow effect that it gave the blood uptake into the muscle groups. I enjoyed the physical benefits, but what I found more important with that was my mental focus increased. My breath was deeper. I was able to hold a pose, much like a bodybuilder has to hold a front double bicep pose on stage. If we go back some years back to Mr. Olympia with Arnold Schwarzenegger, he himself practiced yoga. And old guys like myself, would look back at the Arnold Schwarzenegger days and what did he do to look the best? And even, 20 years ago, that was still infamous. And he practiced yoga. So
Schwarzenegger did.
Yes, Arnold Schwarzenegger practiced yoga. Pumping iron. It's right there in the documentary Pumping Iron, where he's practicing ballet and yoga, because you have to hold these poses to get the benefits, and it gave dividends to being on stage and holding a pose against an opponent for 3 minutes. So that's what first originated. In terms of the benefits I got. And then secondly, I was not as sore after a workout with yoga versus working out with heavy weights. You're sore, you're sort of muscle bound, you're tight, but yoga left me feeling centered. I had a deeper breath, as I said. I had more balance. Balance was important as we get older in age, especially men. Our balance tends to leave us soon. 40 and up, we start, losing that balance factor.
Yeah, I think particularly, and obviously I'm only in my late 40s, but I look around and I notice that, men, as they get up there, tend to be maybe a little less agile. They're a little less, there's more sitting that might happen than should. And I think having a steady yoga practice, even starting at that age, is going to have benefits. But if you start a yoga practice in your 40s, in your 60s and 70s, you're going to have great balance. And as you get even older, it's those falls that really can be life-changing or life-ending for certain people once they're in their 80s or 90s. And it's like, learn to develop that intelligence in your feet and in your knees and your hips. So when you do catch a little bit of a slippery spot, maybe give your body an extra microsecond to know what to do, or at least know how to soften the fall in a way that's going to do less damage.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I think I totally appreciate that. Would you say that as you've gotten older, having a yoga practice has helped you in some ways find more patience or a softer side, or a bit of an ability to put things in perspective a little quicker, that, when life doesn't go your way or things happen, you're a little bit more at peace with it? Has your yoga practice helped in that way?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny because when things don't go your way, I don't know, you run a stoplight or, maybe you've got things that you need to do. It absolutely helps you to slow down and really breathe in and think about what's going on so that you can react to that a little differently. Your reaction time is much more clear. You have more focus in terms of what decision you want to make. Let's use an example. If you're, carrying a wine glass and you trip, you have a little bit more steady hands. Your mind seems to react more fluently with your body.
Yep.
Than if you would normally trip over something. Your joints have a little bit more range of motion, so you're able to catch yourself if you need to. So, yeah, there's definitely benefits, I feel, to aging and becoming less stable. You have a little bit more reaction time. Like you just mentioned, that microsecond might save you from maybe falling down that last step that you thought wasn't there, or, tripping, maybe over something, a step or something. So I feel like that it will, give you lasting benefits. And I think you should keep going and doing yoga throughout your life. There's so many different forms and styles of yoga. Keeping that going through chair meditation or through, just sitting and doing these katas, these yoga stretches, these basic moves, very slow, will give you so much more of a mental effect. I've had many clients over my tenure with yoga because I would do one-on-ones or classes, and not one of my students has ever said that I notice, that I'm not doing this as good. They've always said, I see myself doing things with more purpose, more vision, more concentrated effort. And I think wholly with more breath. I mean, I think when you can learn to use that bellows breath and, that deep Unjana breath, the Ujjayi breath, you have more chance to allow your mind and conscious to, to think about the end result that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think the breath work is something that I came across, or I had a greater appreciation for a little bit later in my training, and I would say in the last few years, and particularly using the breath to either warm up the body or either kind of warm up the mind or calm down the mind, but also using the breath in your diaphragm and your deep core to support your body and to find stamina in your deep core. And also just the ability to kind of greater awareness of how you feel or what's going on. Like I just, that breath is just literally like it's the energy and kind of the fuel for how the mind connects to the body, like neuroplasticity, like, getting a better sense of feeling in your foot or better balance in your foot, or knowing that a certain posture or position is going to put challenges on a lower back. Like that all kind of starts out of the breath and that breath work. And I think the asanas just give you an opportunity to learn to dial into that, especially when you're in a deeper place in that asana than you were a couple of weeks ago. Where's your breath to kind of help tell you whether you're at that edge and when to back off or when to go a little bit deeper. I think there's just so much in there. So one sort of follow-up, I think some of the things about yoga that turns off guys is the mystical aspect of it, the sort of spirituality or whatever. I think it's hard not to have some appreciation for the spiritual aspects in a steady yoga practice, and especially in a community or in a studio. I mean, you just sort of feel connected to more people when you do this. And I'm wondering, in your practice and in your experience with yoga, and I don't know whether you're a deeply spiritual guy or not, but I'm curious, where does the spirituality stuff come in there for you? Like,
oh, well, that's a great question. I feel like for me, I'm a very spiritual person. I'm a Christian, and I tend to look at history. So, when I was interested in yoga 20 some years ago, I wanted to see what its background was. What is the basis of it? And lo and behold, it's older than creation. I mean, we can trace it back to India 2,500 years ago. And I feel like that it has given me this spiritual mentality. I have a deeper practice with, my Holy Spirit. I have, during the workouts, experienced things that I can't really explain to people other than the euphoria.
Yep.
I feel free, and that helps me in every corner of life. As a guy that's in athletics in the past, still in athletics, as a guy who teaches yoga, as a guy who leads a community as a whole, that is my mission, is to help others. It's been my mission since I started lifting and training with yoga at the age of 34. Before that, it was lifting, but it has helped me to introduce people to a better lifestyle. And when I say lifestyle, I mean everything. Every facet of their life is going to improve, bar none. If you just be aware and allow yourself to find that right class, to find that right teacher, to find that right mentor, you're going to see yourself change in a lot of ways that I think you maybe wouldn't if you just led your life the same way. That's my experience. And I'm not trying to sell that to other people, but it's worked for me. And I'm very thankful and appreciative to that.
Yeah, well, that's a beautiful way to put it. I think about it. I was raised Episcopalian, and I have a great appreciation now for a lot of different types of religious disciplines. And I think all of it has not only tons of similarities, but they can complement each other as well. And I think when you look at Christ's message of love, that really kind of, it can sit quite comfortably in sort of some of the Hindu Vedic writings and the Upanishads and, the Bhagavad Gita. Like there's aspects that are very different, but there is kind of, there's wisdom and there's compassion and there's understanding in all of this stuff. And if you are someone who's a Christian, you can have a totally, deep, steady yoga practice that may have spiritual aspects or may not. Or you can be, someone who's just a Buddhist, or you could be a Muslim, or you could be an atheist. It doesn't matter. But like, there's opportunity to have perhaps an even more robust, three-dimensional appreciation for the spirit, whatever the spirit is for you. So I appreciate you sharing that perspective, because I think it's spot on for the benefits of yoga, but also the benefits of just having a more diverse thinking about how you can enjoy life in the universe and your community around you.
Absolutely. It's funny, one of my family members is, sort of not sure of his faith, but he enjoys the universe and refers to Mother Earth and meditates daily. And he is intertwined in a beautiful earth that we live in. And I think you absolutely are spot on with what you're saying, is you can enjoy the universe at a higher level. And I think yoga for me is part of that. And it makes me feel good to hear other guys, especially, and women that I've introduced into yoga that still continue to do it from that first day, 22 years ago. They are still practicing. And I think that lends a little bit of information, a little bit of extra credit to what you're saying, because people that usually start it and find a practice, they continue that journey. And much like sports, you evolve into that. Different branches, just like yoga, you have different branches of that tree, and there's so many different paths and ways to do that. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. It's like there's just so many different ways to enjoy the experience. And if you come for the physical, and then it has mental benefits, and then it has spiritual benefits, well, you're just flourishing at every possible, avenue that's brought to you. And there's just an unfolding. Whatever challenge is there for you today, that challenge may not be there a year from now. You might have a new challenge. And I think having this practice just helps you recover and move on to the next. And so I appreciate all of that. As we get towards the end here, I got the question of, okay, so we have an audience listening of, this show is really, it's about targeting guys, but it could be anyone listening. But if you were speaking to an auditorium of men, or a podcast universe of men who haven't done yoga or tried it and didn't come back, what kind of advice would you give those guys, as somebody who's not only a longtime yoga practitioner, but also a guy in his 60s who's lived a full life already? What would you share with that audience?
Well, I would say, new things it's like teaching an old dog new tricks. It's all about what the mind wants to do. The mind is a powerful tool. Whether you're young or old and never tried yoga, I think my message is never, ever close your mind off. Always keep your mind open and try to experience something different in your life. Yoga is totally something that's new, and it can happen with anyone. I mean, old, young, doesn't matter. And to those guys who have maybe tried it years ago, wasn't so big on it, but now, want to get back into it, never give up. I think everyone has this personal thing inside of them that wants to keep achieving and making themselves bigger and better. And we want to live a long and enriching life. So try to embellish and try to work at new things, and you will see that your doors will open up in your life in many different ways that you probably would not expect that to happen. But you have to be mindful and you have to allow it. So that would be my message to those guys.
That's great. Well, Steve, it's great to finally meet you. Thank you for spending some time with us on the podcast here and sharing your story. Thanks for being a leader in the town of Salisbury with your yoga studio and helping getting so many people into yoga and other fitness modalities that help with their lives. And I look forward to talking again, but thanks for your time and have a great day.
Derek, it's been a pleasure to be with you and your podcast, and I look forward to the next time. And please subscribe to this channel. It's been a pleasure. It's my first time, and I hope and wish you the best in your podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If any of you are in North Carolina, go check out SoFul Yoga and ask for Steve.
SoFul Yoga, you got it. Thank you very much, Derek.
Thank you, friend.